Okay, we'll go to 7.1, which I mistakenly glanced at this morning, thinking it was 7.2 that might take some time. So I've had these poor planning and development people sit and be educated all morning. So now they can educate us. We'll let you talk about your land use bylaw in the first reading, which is quite an exciting moment. Truly, I say that.
Okay, thank you. So this is the first reading of Land Use Bylaw 2016-21. Since I started almost 2.5 years ago, I guess, and I first started getting familiar with this document, there was a lot of inconsistencies in the document, duplicate policies, a lot of items are open to interpretation. And so, you know, if different people have different interpretations, that can lead to inconsistencies. So we've now created this draft land use bylaw that is 1/3 of the size. It's, in my opinion, more streamlined. It cuts some red tape. I think it's easier for our department to use, for developers to use, and for decision makers to use, hopefully. So some of the changes that we have incorporated into this document include, we've added a few items to the list of items not requiring a development permit. So any uncovered decks that are connected to a principal building, the house and whatnot, will no longer require a development permit, provided they meet the setbacks and all the policy within the document, and that's for everything that's in this list. We've put shipping containers as not requiring a permit in the agricultural general district, and up to 2 shipping containers in agriculture small lot district. So ag gen would be the same as the agricultural district is currently, and agriculture small lot district would be small holdings that we have currently. Freestanding solar panels up to 28 meters squared and rooftop solar panels. So Shannalee did a little bit of investigating. She talked to some of the solar panel installers in our area, and 28 square meters is kind of the distinguishing number between what's industrial and what's personal use. So we thought that anything personal use, if it's freestanding or rooftop, could be done without the benefit of a development permit. Anything bigger than that does need to get that approval. And the last thing on the list, which is in addition to everything else that is currently in the land use bylaw, is home-based business 1. So these would be businesses that really don't have any, it doesn't make the use of a parcel different. So someone who's doing bookkeeping in their house, or a hairstylist who has maybe 1 person come a week, or just in-house businesses, the matchmaking service that we had come to council to MPC, pardon me, not that long ago. Those would be exempt from a development permit. We've changed the setbacks a little bit in the residential rural district. So we have been taking applications to MPC for variances quite frequently. Some examples would be Johnston Estates, where the setbacks currently are 25 feet, which in that development where they have such small lots, anything that they want to develop will have to come to MPC. So we've made it so those setbacks better reflect the development that would happen in those areas. And then in ag districts, it will go from 7.6 meters to 7.6 to 6 meters. So just a small change there. One of the biggest changes, I guess, is we've decided to remove the fringe district within the land use bylaw. The fringe district happened, I think, years and years ago before there was ever intermunicipal development plans. And so then this district was used to protect or to allow, say, the city to have some input into the fringe areas between the county and the city or other municipalities. Now, because we have these IDPs, that fringe district is no longer required to protect that development. Those policies should be housed in the IDP. So where the land use bylaw will direct development and what can and can't be done on the land, the IDP will say, you know, anything with nuisance or any discretionary permits need to be circulated, and then they can have a say through the IDP policy. So fringe district, all of the fringe district in our current land use bylaw is actually ag land. So the use of that land is agriculture. So that's now changed from fringe to agriculture general. Manufactured home parks are currently under direct control, so anything that would happen in a manufactured home park would have to be decided by council. We have created a new residential manufactured home park to allow for a developer to be, they can go to our land use bylaw and then they know what can happen, what can and can't happen in a mobile home park, versus a direct control district where there's a little bit more uncertainty because it is because everything is a decision of council. We've also decided to move airports under direct control. They are currently under rural business. And part of that rural business district is that setbacks are 25 feet, which does not correctly reflect the lot sizes and the development in airports. Airports also have significant influence on the surrounding lands. So allowing MPC to comment on, allowing MPC or council to comment on what is happening and what isn't happening in those direct control districts. These direct control districts, we will work with Pisano and Brooks to decide the direction of the policy for those districts. We have stripped out all the subdivision policy in this land use bylaw, and we're going to create a new standalone subdivision policy. So we're currently working with ISL to create that, and that will be presented to council in early September. So that's not missing, it is coming, and it will reflect the policy that we have, a lot of the policy that we have currently. It might just be a little bit more black and white. Currently in our land use bylaw, we have paper maps that anytime a land use bylaw amendment is done, Pam has to print off the maps and find all the paper copies, change all of those. So we are going to forego the paper copies, and we're going to just go with the map that the GIS people create, and so it will always be up to date, and we don't have to worry about the paper shuffling. Back to the, uses and standards. Okay, so these are very similar. The permitted and discretionary uses are very similar to what we have currently in our land use bylaw. We've changed some of the definitions so that will allow some flexibility for the or for our department to allow things that are maybe not, you know, if it's not a seed cleaning facility, but it's, you know, similar in use, that we can, you know, we have a little bit more play, I guess, with allowing different things to happen. We've also put in this land use bylaw that the development authority is able to grant a 50% variance in standard. So that would be setbacks would be a big one. If the department feels that a 50% variance would not unduly interfere with the use and enjoyment of the neighbors, then we would be able to do that as administration versus always taking it to MPC. Having said that, the department always has the ability to decide, you know, we're going to have some more eyes on this and get a decision from MPC. So I guess a few things. We did meet with the town of Bizano and the city of Brooks. They reviewed the land use bylaw during the public open house. Bizano didn't have any concerns. They really want to promote the economic development in the area, and then they're excited for more flexibility. They did want to have input in the airport, of course, but they were also in agreement that a direct control district is the best way to go. We've recently worked with somebody who who is developing a hangar at the Bizano airport, and there was a lot of back and forth because this applicant wanted to buy the lot from the city of Bizano, but he was uncertain about his ability to build the hangar that he wanted, and so he had to place a little bit of trust, I guess, in Bizano and the county and the decision of MPC. It really wasn't as streamlined as it will be once we have better policy in place that directs the development within these areas. The city of Brooks, they had concerns regarding changing the fringe district to ADJOURN. There are, in our current land use bylaw, there is some policy that talks about the County of Newell land use bylaw. So it talks about the land use bylaw that was even prior to this one. So it is already currently outdated, but their concern is that if we now change the fringe district that it discusses in the IDP to now ADJOURN, then where does that policy lie? So it is a valid concern. We have been working with the city of Brooks since early 2019 to update our IDP. It's been a bit of a process, and we're currently working on a growth study with ISL and the city of Brooks to determine how big this IDP area should be, and we're trying to look for some evidence to decide what that area should be. So we're still working on it, but that doesn't mean that the IDP isn't outdated currently. They also had a few issues with some of the uses in ADJOURN. Agricultural buildings are now permitted, so agricultural buildings within the fringe district would be permitted. They would not need to be circulated to the city of Brooks. Small wind energy systems and utilities. So those were some of the permitted uses that they had flagged, and then there's some discretionary uses that they had also flagged that are not in the fringe district. Pit and quarry, hotel, motel, and the other one was a kennel. So we had discussed that these will be, because they're discretionary, they will be circulated to the city But that is definitely something that we can discuss with the city and with council. So the other thing that we've been talking about internally is currently in our current land use bylaw, ag intensive and ag processing. So ag intensive being greenhouses, tree farms, aquaculture, ag processing being seed cleaning, feed grain mills. They are currently discretionary. We are proposing that they be permitted in the agricultural district. So I guess maybe we would like some direction as far as should these be permitted, or should we allow adjacent landowners to comment and MPC to make the decision on where these should be located. I think that's all I have. Jeff, do you have anything to add?
I think Maria touched on most of the things. You know, the main goal from the outset of this project was to create a document that was understandable, not to the people working with it every day, but to the person that picks it up and wants to put up a barn, a shed, a shop, whatever it may be, a solar energy collection system, and have the ability to understand that, like Maria mentioned, we've chopped this land use bylaw down to 87 pages, I think, from the previously existing 257, and a lot of that, and sorry, back up a little bit, I don't believe that we've lost any regulation that 257 page document had. We've removed duplicate policies. We've removed areas that were conflicting policies and tried to streamline it. The document's been written in a way that, you know, reading it from cover to cover is going to work better in actually explaining the entire development process from cradle to grave, as opposed to hopping all over the place and trying to figure it out. We hope that with some education, we can assist developers easier. We know that the accessibility of the document, and I don't mean being able to download it, but being able to navigate through it and the different ways that it will be able to be viewed is going to help a lot in getting people to use that document and understand that document and work through it during their development. Again, Maria brought up some concerns that were raised by our intermunicipal neighbors. Town of Bazzano, City of Brooks. We haven't had the chance to sit down with the villages yet, and will do so if they do want to sit down. However, one thing that we're trying to get out of doing is having our intermunicipal development plans dictate what happens in our land use bylaw, and kind of trying to break that tie between the two, because they are two separate documents, one being a statutory plan and one being the guiding document for development throughout the county. So to have these documents tied or linked is a practice that we understand is quite historical. Maria mentioned the fringe district coming in long before IDPs were made mandatory, and it just kind of stuck around. And we feel that it's a hindrance in the process to have that happen, and we don't disagree that the policies and the information that is agreed upon in the IDP and possibly in the 2012 version of the land use bylaw, which it refers to, are very important. We believe that intermunicipal development control and policies should be housed in the IDP and not tied to the land use bylaw in the way that it is today. And we did also mention, we're going to speak to this at the IDP meeting, we would look at some minor amendments which we do think are necessary in the IDP. Maybe not now, but in the future, maybe before we get to finalizing a new IDP with the city, or not. Maybe it can wait, but that'll be open for discussion for sure. I think what we've done is we've taken a lot of the gray out of it and made it more black and white. We've modernized it. We've made it easier to read. We've provided diagrams and specific examples, and really we think it's going to be a much more user-friendly document. The last thing I want to say is one thing that we've noticed as we've gone through this process is, I say we don't want these plans to relate, but they do. They all do. The municipal development plan, the area structure plans, the intermunicipal development plans. And one thing that I think we haven't done as good a job as we could have in the past is ensuring that those plans are reviewed, and what it says in the plan, we're actually doing, reviewing those plans when we say we're going to review them. When we make an amendment to one plan, taking a look at the other plans that it speaks to make sure that those plans are still congruent with what we're saying in the other plans, you know what I mean? And if that means minor amendments to multiple plans spurring out of the amendment of one plan, then that's exactly what we need to do, and to be responsible and make things congruent, I think it is the way we need to go. This land use bylaw update is just the first step in where we're going now. We know we need an update to our municipal development plan because it's many years old, over a decade, predating my time here at the county. So that is next on our list. And then we do want to get back into these IDPs. We want to get into building these direct control districts and working together with our neighbors and those with, skin in the game, so to say, to garner their input. The public open house that we had, we decided to go virtual. We would have loved to have in-person open houses, but I've stood around a lot of in-person open houses and just talked to peers and staff, because it's tough to get people out to those things. But we had 175 unique visitors to our virtual open house, which is fantastic. I don't think we could have held enough open houses to get 175 people out to talk about the land use bylaw. So I'm really, really pleased with the turnout that produced. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I think we've built a really good document, and I just want to give credit to ISL as well. They won the proposal to lead us through this process, and we've had nothing but good things to say about them and the work that they've done on the land use bylaw and on the other terms of our contract have been fantastic.
That's good to hear. Thank you for a big job. Questions? Clarence.
When we look at IDPs, we understand why our more populated neighbors are concerned what happens next door. But does it also work the other way around? And I can't think of an example at the moment, but are we also concerned what happens within their borders?
I think 100%, and I think some of that just goes back to what I said earlier, is we want to get back to doing what we say we're going to do in the plans, and we want to get back to expecting that of our partners as well, and our neighbors, to ensure that what we write here, we don't just write it to get the plan done and get it approved. We write it because it's important policy, and we put it there, and we put those timelines and things, those referrals and everything else there, because they are important to us at the county and to our municipal neighbors with those intermunicipal development plans. So yeah, we are very concerned. The more populated areas, that was an interesting way to phrase that, because we know those are some of the most important areas to have good planning practice, to reduce segmentation of full quarter sections of land, and ensure that there is a plan in place for not only 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, but 20 and 50 and 70 years down the road, and identifying those things early in this growth study that we're working through with ISL and Metro Economics out of Ontario is it's a really interesting process, and we're learning a lot of things that you wouldn't immediately think of with a simple development permit application. Population and growth projections and things like this are the things that we need that information to better assess our current situation and what's needed from it. But in an answer to your question, yeah, I think that we as the county should be concerned what's going on adjacent to our borders in these urban municipalities, as much as they should be concerned with what's going on surrounding them. And I think it's without being said that we need to work together and need to be on the same page and trust each other and ensure that we're going about things how we said we're going to go about things.
Clarence.
You mentioned something which just struck me right just now when you said you get way better response on virtual. And this morning we made, was it ExploreNet, have an open house. And I know this is a different subject, but maybe that should also be virtual. Maybe that's something we should be thinking about. And I don't know, just something that, when you said there's 170, we never get anybody in person, and you get 170 responses, that should tell us something.
Back to the decision that was made earlier, I realize that we're going back, but they are proposing doing a virtual open house. And I do think that it is a great way to go, because anyone can take, you know, whatever time they have while their, you know, dinner is cooking to go and attend and have a look at, you know, what is presented on the boards via their computer. One thing that is missing is the conversations that would happen at an open house. And that's, you know, maybe something that for future open houses, maybe we could have a chat room or something where people can discuss. But I think it was very positive. I think it was a great way for us to go with that virtual open house.
Are there questions? Brian?
Is there any examples of IMDPs where that what Clarence referred to, a reciprocal agreement where they have they can provide comment on that area, that fringe area that we're taking out of this, that exists in the IMDP, whether that's reciprocal for the other municipality? I know that, well, I shouldn't say I know, I believe, like when you have growth areas like the City of Calgary growth area and stuff like that, that's, I believe, is incorporated in that. It's just, because, you know, I'm assuming the City of Brooks has an IMDP because they're required to, right? Do we have the opportunity to comment on things that they are able to do on a fringe area that do affect those agriculture lands that are about the City of Brooks and the other municipalities too? It's not, I'm just picking on the city, right? But I mean, Bassano, Rosemary, and Dutchess it's a similar agreement that we deal with, but I've never seen that reciprocal ability to comment. So do they exist within the exploration of what you guys have dealt with outside of us, or is there any willingness in that area for something like that to exist?
In the policy, anything within the city that directly abuts the county should be referred to the County of Newell. The county obviously has a much larger referral area. Is it 2 miles? 2 miles from the border of the city out is what the county needs to refer to the city. And that's the same with all of our neighboring all of our urban neighboring municipalities. And then they should refer to us everything directly abutting. A plan is as good as the people that use it and that are following the policy. So, you know, as long as all the policy is being followed, then we should be referred any land use amendments to the, any land use bylaw amendments or any developments within that area.
Jeff?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know, when I first got into this, I was maybe caught in a little bit of a rabbit hole back in 2019. I thought intermunicipal development plans, the sole purpose of them was for the urbans, you know, to protect their growth radius and protect fragmentation of adjacent parcels so the city could grow. You know what I mean? I didn't take into account too much, well, what does the county have vested in what's happening in the city, affecting the county, whether that's affecting the agricultural lands, whether that's affecting the traffic corridors, movements in and out of the city, so on and so forth. And I think that a lot of our existing IDPs that we didn't write recently in the last 2 or 3 years maybe took a bit of that same approach. You know what I mean? That there's a lot of distinction and planning areas and boundaries and maps that define what's in the county as a referral area, but not so much of a defined area in the urbans. Maria mentioned, I think the city talks about anything adjacent to the county boundary, you know what I mean? But maybe this parcel isn't adjacent to the county boundary and they're putting a school or something that's going to cause traffic issues or concerns. And I think those are some of the things that we're getting more in tune with, that we need to look at when we do go to updating our IDPs with some of our urban neighbors. Yeah.
Just to back that up, I just looked up our IDP with Pisano and the commitment to consult and cooperate. The first sentence says what happens in either municipality is to be communicated. So that's the main goal of the IDP. I don't know that we're doing a good job of that.
And there's a few policies in some of the IDPs, you know what I mean? If we read them all cover to cover, we'd know, you know, one of the policies, even in the Pisano IDP, there, Councillor Chrisman, is that, you know, we will as administration sit down annually to discuss any concerns, issues, amendments, how is it working, is it not working, should it be amended, rescinded, what, and it just hasn't happened. So what we're doing is working towards building those policies that matter, you know what I mean? Whereas maybe we have 1 or 2 development permits annually within that Pisano IDP area. Is it worth meeting annually? I'm not sure, maybe it is, but if we write it there and we say we're going to do it, we need to get back to doing that and managing that on a basis consistent with what we write.
And it is in our procedure for subdivisions and developments that anything that's within that IDP boundary does get referred. So I can tell you that our department, it does follow the policy of the IDPs.
Question, the only thing that I worry about, the word fringe says something to me if I look at that map. So I think it's important for people to know that that is a special sort of region of development. You know, I look at somebody who, let's say, I don't know, retired farmer who thinks that if he's living in the agricultural area of the county that he's free of everything and sort of can carry on like he did 50 miles away in that fringe as of now. So as long as there's something that triggers in people's minds that this is special, it's not just your old regular agricultural area.
For sure, and that's I think one of the confusing parts with our existing IDPs and how they relate back to our land use bylaw. In all of our rural to urban IDPs, you know, Rosemary aside, because we completed that IDP with Dylan and didn't take the fringe district into that IDP. There's 2 policies in each of the IDPs that relate that talk about the fringe district and the land use bylaw. One is with regards to subdivision and fragmentation of parcels, and the other is to do with development permits and permitted and discretionary uses. And it's those two that point to the land use bylaw, but then the IDP goes on to talk about and use the word fringe in a number of other different contexts. It's mentioned about 18 or 19 other times, and it talks about, you know, the urban fringe area, the Brooks urban fringe area, the IMDP area, and this is, while I totally agree it needs to be defined and very clear. Right now, I don't think it is quite that clear, and I think that's one of the things that presses the need for that update and alignment and congruency of plans again, to make sure everything across the board is speaking the same language and talking to each other correctly.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of documents that, yeah, and some are compulsory, right? You have to have them. Yeah, because at one time the towns of a certain size didn't and stuff like that.
IDPs became compulsory in 2020, yeah, and that was a mandate put forward, and we got the grant that worked together with Dillon Consulting to do our rural to rurals. We already had some rural to urbans completed and some rural to rurals. And then, you know, just as we were almost wrapping up that project, they came out and said, well, IDPs maybe aren't necessary rural to rural if there's an agreement, you know, right after we said signed the final bylaw on our last rural to rural IDP. And are rural to rural IDPs necessary? Maybe in some places. In the county of Newell, it's tough just with the distinct separations that we have, being rivers, being the grassland between us and Cypress. You know, Wheatland is really the only rural to rural municipality that we share county road intersections with. Have developed, be that agricultural cultivated lands bordering each other. So yeah, there maybe is a place for them, but they should be simple. They should contain strong policy. They should contain policy that's important to the councils, that's important as stated through our municipal development plans, which we really hope to get back to in 2022 and get an update done of that. But you know, one of the things that ISL brought to our attention, there's some rural to rurals up north who have put all of their IDPs on one page, on an 11 by 17 page, and it's fantastic. You know, I don't think it holds any less weight than ours that are 30 or 40 pages hold, but it's easy. It's as simple for somebody to look at and gain the picture of what the policy is, and that's what IDPs are, policy, and then decisions are made based on those policy.
Yeah, I like that. One other question, about the solar panels. So 28 square meters is I think the number that you said. So does that have to be in, I mean, 7 times 4? Could it be 14 times 2? So it could be 28 meters in high too? By 1?
It really can be however the applicant decides they want to do that to best capture the sun. Rooftop obviously needs to stay within the dimensions of the roof. And then freestanding, yeah, I suppose it could be as tall as they want, provided they also adhere to the policies on solar panels, the specific uses within the land use bylaw.
Okay. It just hit me. You didn't need to get a development permit, but you'd already be under control from some other part of the document. Gotcha. Okay.
Sorry, I won't say anything else after this.
No,
Unless
it's
asked.
fine.
One of the other big things that we did is we took a look at historical development permits and historical permits that would come before MPC, and we asked ourselves, is this necessary to be here, or are we literally shuffling papers and
Making it harder.
blindly stamping things and creating, for lack of a better term, all the red tape for people and slowing them down on what they really want to do. We're trying to look at things that aren't going to adversely affect neighboring properties. Solar panels was a big discussion with us. Not so much the rooftop ones, but the freestanding and how we're going to differentiate the industrial scale from the personal use. And us and ISL, we looked at a number of different municipalities. Shanley talked to the local solar panel installers around here, and that's kind of what we came up with as a number that would be acceptable. And again, saying that it doesn't require a development permit still means it needs to meet the requirements of that district. So they can't build it on the property line. They can't do anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay, other questions? Clarence?
I'm not sure if we need language in here at all for this, but I think as we sit and I think feeling of council was that there was times when we made decisions at MPC that could have been made by staff.
Yeah.
And we've moved that. But I also think it's very important that no matter who's sitting around the table or sitting over there, that they know at any time that they have some questions or something that just doesn't quite fit, that they should feel free to come to council and ask for an opinion. I think there's an understanding amongst us now. As people change, I think that should still be the case. And I'm not sure if we need language for that or not, but I think it's very important that that working relationship that's between staff and council is open, is not threatening for either group. And I don't know if you put that in there, but as you shift more to one side or the other, it's important that stays, communication stays.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because that's something that we've discussed at the administrative level quite a bit through this. You know what I mean, and talking about getting stuff off MPC's plates and getting people moving on their developments a little bit quicker and whatever else. That's the end goal. But with that comes a lot of responsibility and maybe even pressure. You know what I mean? Knowing that an administrative development authority is now going to be making the call on can you or can't you. So I think we could definitely discuss that with ISL if there's a spot in the document for that text, or maybe there is, Maria.
With that 50% variance power, there is verbiage in the document that says that staff does have the ability at any time to take a permit to MPC. A caveat to that is if it is a permitted use, then we have the responsibility to issue the permit if it's following all the policy of the land use bylaw. Which maybe leads me back to agriculture intensive and agricultural processing is currently a permitted use. And, if you think of uses such as a tree farm, that seems like it would be fairly, it would be fairly seamless to have something like that within an agricultural district. But if you look at some of the greenhouses that are being built in the Coaldale, Tabor, Medicine Hat area, that maybe has a little bit more effect on the local on the local area or on the adjacent landowners. That's maybe something to consider, moving that to discretionary. It's still a use within that district. It's just now a decision of MPC. Or maybe it fits if it's an ag district and it's for farming, then maybe it fits. But I think that's something definitely to consider.
Question, Clarence, did you mean that the applicant should also always have the opportunity as well?
Well, that's not what I was getting at.
Okay.
I was making sure that lines of communication were open between staff and council
Okay.
when there's things that don't fit in holes.
One of the tough things that we dealt with through this whole process that started back in January in our internal staff discussions with ISL, you know, some recommendations that came from ISL about, you know, just for instance, maybe we should move gravel pits under direct control district. There's a lot going on. They cause a lot of havoc. You know, we don't have many problems with these things, you know what I mean? So it's tough to have the discussion and make a real strong recommendation on where some of these things need to lie if you haven't had the issues, the concerns, the complaints, the drama that comes along with some of that stuff that, you know, some of our neighbors, Wheatland County, Cypress County, Rocky View County, have had significant issues with gravel pits and adjacent landowners and everything else. But, you know, I don't know if it's that we're just that little bit more rural that we haven't run up against it yet, but it's what we don't want to do is police something that doesn't need policing either. We want to make it streamlined and as simple as possible for the public, industry, any developer really to do what they want to do with their land and ensure we have the appropriate controls in place.
No, it sounds really practical, reasonable, and I'm amazed at all the stuff you found that was easy to pull out. I mean, to begin with, shouldn't have been there. So it tells me we've made the right decision in our response to, yeah. Anyhow, we'll move away from that. Anything else? Brian and Kelly.
I just wanted to compliment you and the committee that worked on this to bringing this from a, what did you say, 280 pages down to a third of that? That's amazing. So congratulations on doing that. I always used to bug the previous planner to say, well, if you're adding one, you should remove two. Well, you guys did better than that. So thank you so much. And I'd happily make the motion for first reading.
Okay, Kelly, is that right? Okay. Brian has made the motion for first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you so much, you guys, for your good work and patience today again. I think that means we've completed page 1, which was a big page. Oh, we did. Oh, 7.2. Geez, I'm just into. Yeah, so there. I am. Goodness, I got all excited and I crossed you out instead of the land use people. Okay, Mark, 7.2. Encroachment, which is such a funny word.
It's the legalese of it all. It's not my language. To date, we've been encountering a number of things out there when we go to do some of our work. Sometimes it's just as we're driving down the road, we identify things that aren't quite right. And unfortunately, I guess the thing that really comes to here is the bylaw that is being proposed today is driven by some of the program services and things that we've gotten ourselves into that we're working with. One of those is the EID partnership on drainage. And when we acquire land, we affect irrigation pivots. When we affect irrigation pivots, we affect the income and revenues generated from farmers, as well as the produce that goes out to the rest of the product generated from what has been grown there. And aside to that is our third-party utility service providers also become affected. And where we allow that private property to remain as is, being an irrigation pivot, there are conflicts. And we can't just simply grandfather a pivot to remain where it is, how it is. We don't permit those things right now under any kind of development standard or anything. And I think it's, we're trying to do improvements throughout the community for the betterment of the community as a whole, improving drainage. It improves our roads for all motorists. It helps agriculture because it drains, it's not meant to take the drainage from the fields, but we know that it has that reciprocating effect at times, and it helps everything overall. It increases the snow storage for our roads when we're doing winter snow services and stuff. But when we get into the discussion of purchasing land, and we had this discussion on paved road infrastructure here not that long ago, earlier this year. Purchasing land can affect a pivot on all four sides of the square parcel of land that the circle makes. We can't simply just allow a pivot to remain as it is, overhanging the new property line. Under the MGA, roads are under our care and direction is granted to us through the MGA, but they are owned under the Crown. And with that, the legal advice came back to recommend this bylaw. And if this bylaw is something that council would like to see put in place, then we have policy and agreements that will go along with that policy to afford administration to work with landowners to allow those pivots or those other encroachments to remain in place, whether it's a result of projects or whether we've flagged an installation, being a building, a pivot, or whatever, that is currently overhanging a road allowance that probably shouldn't have been in the first place. I don't know what else I really have to share on that. I think most councillors know what I'm talking about, have probably seen what I'm talking about. Maybe what council hasn't seen is where Fortis Alberta with an overhead power line goes to install a power line down the road allowance, but due to pivot end guns being practically on the property line or even overhanging the property line into the road allowance, Fortis Alberta cannot install their overhead facilities the way that they normally would. Some people can simply say, well, tell them to go underground. Well, that would be great, except that comes at more expense to them for getting their facilities buried. And then it also has some negative impact on the county as well, because any simple work where we have ground disturbance and there's a buried power facility, that is a lot higher risk for our operators or even those contractors that work for us. And we now have to do additional hydrovacking before we can safely do our excavations and stuff to maintain roadside ditches and things of that nature. That's really the nuts and bolts about all of it. Everything else is controlled by development. So the pivots are the ones that stand out the most in this discussion to kind of support driving this bylaw and subsequent policies if council is so interested. So I'm interested to attempt to answer any questions that I can. I am seeking first reading on the bylaw, that is the recommendations, so that I can attempt to get the EID partnership on drainage back on track, because some of the acquisitions outstanding right now, the condition from landowners is they would like to have an agreement in writing supporting that their pivot will be allowed to remain in place as it is today. Not contained within this bylaw, if you read your entire council package and got to the policy and the agreements, are terms and conditions of the agreements that are consistent with those of what Alberta Transportation applies to landowners along roads that they control. And in that is like a 30-day notification that a landowner may have to modify their overhanging equipment to be back onto their own property. And I think that needs to be stated at this point in time before council considers the bylaw, so that you know what you're truly dealing with when a bylaw comes into effect, and then we further discuss policy and agreements. And I wasn't sure how to present this other than here's the bylaw, and if you pass the bylaw, or at least first reading, we can then carry on discussion about policy and agreements that'll be tied to that, because that's generally what happens in this process.
Questions, folks? Brian?
So maybe I'm misunderstanding your intent, but if we put this into first reading, how is this going to help in land acquisition? It seems to me it would not.
Well, technically not yet, and I guess maybe I'm a little bit premature with the subsequent policy and stuff, because I don't know if maybe they should all be here at this meeting. If policy or if bylaw receives first reading, it at least starts me going down the road to have the confidence with landowners to potentially get some of these things better tied up than what they are today. They're not going to be willing to sell the land unless we provide them something in writing saying that their pivots can remain as is today. If they don't sell that land, we've got projects that are they're gonna die on the spot. And it's only going to be more difficult as time progresses, because pivots go up, well, I shouldn't say every day, but frequently. That technology has changed, and irrigators are probably a little bit of a difficult conversation for me to have, because I don't know where it truly sits at the end of the day. I know that, and this is some of my ignorance not being an irrigator. I know that the Eastern Irrigation District will work with landowners to come out with a pivot configuration that will fit their parcel. From that layout goes to an irrigation pivot supplier. They figure out what all needs to fit, but then they don't necessarily hire a legal surveyor to pinpoint the exact dead center of that parcel of land. They come close, they may not be perfect, but they don't do it that way. They go and erect the center of the pivot, and if something is overhanging by a foot, really it's unbeknownst to anybody except for maybe the guy actually running the pivot, that your end gun's got to shut off sooner and turn back on later, because this side is just slightly out. And a little bit difficult for me to say, but maybe some people do it intentionally. Maybe they're oversizing their pivots, or maybe they've gone with a corner arm system where it pushes some of that infrastructure, private infrastructure, further out onto the property. Or maybe it causes the end gun on that corner arm system to project beyond the property line, which wasn't identified at the time of installation or design, but that's just how it's going to run. And maybe there's some things that you people around the table know better than me about pivots, because I'm really truly ignorant to it. I've done my best to try to get a little bit familiar at least, but those are some of the instances that we run into, and I don't want to say that it's no fault of anybody, because it obviously wasn't contained on the property where it should be. And then Fortis Alberta also has some requirements and best practices as to how far that property should be away from a power facility, so that there is no arcing of those power lines down onto infrastructure. And, you know, I hear it every day that, well, you know, that's not a big worry. Well, it's not a big worry until something happens. And then who should be the one that's on the hook for making the change to things? Is it the power company? Is it the irrigator? Is it, you know, those things come into question as to who should be responsible for what. And this isn't an easy conversation and it isn't an easy decision, but from legal, it was very clear as to how the MGA is written, what is permitted, what is not permitted. We have a land use bylaw that talks about all other property that we have not done anything in the past with irrigation pivots, and we did not include irrigation pivots moving forward. So leaving it to those people to site the property on their property, contained on their property, is really where that sits. And then we have the operation side of things and or improvement project side of things, that how do we deal with this stuff now when everybody's maximizing the use of their property and things for the greater good of the community are tough to achieve because there's these other conflicts, or people want to have some kind of insurance that they're going to be able to keep those things in place so that the other portion of the circle is not affected, so they continue to maximize the property as much as possible. So that, I don't know how great of an answer that was for you, Councillor ADJOURN, but
Well, I understand the intent, and if it helps in giving some definitive ability for when you go to negotiate or acquire these lands due to our drainage program, then I'm all for that. I'm just, and you're right. I mean, my perspective is that generally, if the way pivot infrastructure is going, and based on the value of crops and production, people want to get the maximum use. It's just logical. You want to get the maximum use of those acres. The newer systems, to my knowledge, will actually help your situation. Because if you change from a traditional complete circle machine on an open quarter to a corner system, you don't need to have that arm that's 40 feet long, that end boom that comes to that property line, because you're going to have a corner system that actually will accommodate and not have to, you don't have to worry about the other three corners getting that extra 2 feet because it's only that one spot. So that's a long answer, but I'm in favor of this as long as it works for you. And you're the one that's behind this, so I would support this, I guess.
okay, so further to that, this bylaw helps establish policy which puts the proper agreements in place for me to work with landowners. The nuts and bolts from legal is, if you don't have the agreements, if you can't deliver it in paper to the people, anybody at any point in time can say, get your property back on your property, your pivot's not allowed to be there, cut it off, do whatever you need to do. I don't think these agreements, I don't want to say that they provide a false sense of security, because it is an agreement. But no matter the circumstances, there's always a fallback to say that if the municipality requires you to relocate your property to your property. So I don't know how saleable this is going to be to property owners either. But it affords me the paperwork to put something in front of them to work with. And if that's not enough, then I guess the project's going to die in a way. I didn't stand a chance, but at least it affords me an opportunity right now to work with the people that ask for it to be in writing so that they have some kind of reassurance.
It's sort of like the road allowance lease agreements in a way. I mean, it makes what is happening a little bit more reassurable, but not, and reminds people that you're not supposed to be doing this to begin with. So if we can get them to figure that out and understand it, I think going forward it's worth a try. There are lots of hands. Wayne, Hubie, Lionel.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, because I got this yellow flashing here, but you make an agreement saying that they can keep, that pivot can keep its same configuration, but can you put in that agreement that only works with that original pivot? And if they change it out, they have to do it differently. Is that a possibility? Or is that a negotiating thing for yourself?
Well, I did talk about the historical part of it, because if we're going in there today, I would like to say that it is also until such time as that landowner makes modifications of sorts. I guess the challenging thing is I don't have the record of what is there today. It hasn't been through a permitting process to know that it's currently I don't even know how long a pivot is. Quarter mile, yeah, right? 400. And pending whether it's a section pivot or a quarter section pivot, right? Or a sweep, and whatever it may be. We don't have anything on the record as to what that pivot is today. I guess we could put it in as to what that pivot is today. I can put that back to legal to confirm that, and that it gets, but what happens if I take this down and I put up a new pivot that's the same? Is council okay with that, or does it have to now go back and meet the new property line constraints? Because I would suggest it should meet the new property line constraints. But then that's removing potential growth and the economies of scale of maximizing the use of the land.
Your land, not my land.
Just making sure. Because that's the question, right? Like, really, from an operations perspective, it's up to us to approve where the power line goes in the road allowance, or where the underground TELUS line goes in the road allowance. They do have their standards where Fortis is 2 feet off of property line, 600 millimeters. TELUS is anywhere between that or a meter off of property line. All of these are inside the road allowance. It doesn't mean that they cannot be somewhere else in the road allowance. We obviously don't want a power pole in the clear zone for safety purposes if a motorist leaves the road allowance to get stopped. But that is where they go based on existing road allowance property lines. When we're doing projects right now, because we widen, typically they move their facilities out as well. In some instances here, they're not going to be able to move their facilities to that property line, because now there will be that private property to third-party utility property conflict. So if we can make the best of both worlds work, where we still get the land, we can do the ditch improvements, we can keep the power where it is potentially, maybe it works for all. Because I think that's where you have the win-win-win, all the win boxes are ticked off on the list, right?
Hubie, Lionel.
So Mark, do you have a count of how many people are infringing in the whole county doing this? Probably not, eh?
No, I do not. And it might not be, if you're on the corner where two roads intersect, it might not be on the one, but because maybe it's offset the other way, maybe it is on the other. I don't have any of that. I know the EID was doing a big review. I think that was just through aerial photographs of seeing who was irrigating how much. Which was taking into account undeveloped road allowances and other lands of EID and stuff. But I don't have anything on record whatsoever. I just know that where we are working or focusing in the partnership for about the next 3 to 5 to maybe even 7 years, we're going to be encountering a lot of it.
Lionel.
Well, I like this policy. I think, Molly, you mentioned that it just improves the awareness. People aren't always aware of where their property starts and where somebody else's ends. And I think at this time, or not at this time, but in the past, I think that not many people recognized county as a property owner in a lot of cases. And I think if you went around the county, you'd find umpteen number of pivots that are non-compliant. And so I do like this. It just perhaps does increase some awareness and maybe some documentation. Because if you have to put up a pivot and you can't keep it within your property, perhaps you could make an agreement with the county to lease enough property to get your pivot to go around. So no, I like this. I like this policy.
All right. Oh, Ellen, and then we'll go to back to the motion that Brian has made.
So I'm just wondering, landowners that are using county land for grazing, for example, does that fall under this one as well? Let's say, would they have to move their fence lines? Is this opening up a can of worms?
No, it's not opening up a can of worms because we already have the road closure and lease bylaws, policies, and things in place. I have to do a little bit more on this to look at where I may be creating some overlap in bylaws from this. I'm really reacting to a situation to try to get projects back on track right now, proposing this to council. Planning and development already issue those road closures and leases which council sees, and whether that's for grazing purposes or for farming purposes, those are already dealt with around the table. And I don't see that this is opening up anything more than what we're already dealing with and addressing. I just need to take the next step to make sure that if any bylaws are crossing over, that this language isn't conflicting, as you heard about the land use bylaw, conflicting policies, conflicting practices and stuff. I just have to make that, and I was just running short on time because this came back from legal just on Friday to get it in your guys' hands for a short work week this week. So that's my next step with all of this, but to try to appease the request from landowners currently, this was the recommendation from legal. Legal looked at Vulcan County, they looked at Strathcona County, and there was one other county out there that currently have bylaws, policies, and agreements in place for these specific reasons. And this is a blended approach of all of those and how they work. So it's already proven to work in the province of Alberta, so I don't see how this would create any conflict or anything otherwise, or open the can of worms per se.
All right. Oh, Clarence, Ohio.
So are you concerned about the overhang, or are you concerned about the water? And then what I'm getting at, Mark, the technology is now there to shut pivots off, not just the end gun. So if you have, for years people have been trying to shut their end guns off, but the technology has gone further than that. So are we concerned that that pivot goes over a foot, 2 feet, but it always shuts off? Plus, some of the other sprinklers shut off. Are we looking at those types of options, or do we want to just basically say this? Where does the end gun have to stop? Where are you suggesting? You're suggesting right at the fence line, with the property line, or you're suggesting 25 feet in? What are we looking for?
Okay, so in proposing this, the bylaw is going to afford that overhang at administration's discretion. There is no rule. There is no 1 foot, there is no 2 meters. So long as it's not creating any conflict or safety issue for any other road user. When the overhang really comes into play, in my opinion, is when that third-party facility owner, such as the power company, needs to run power down the road. Who's the one that should relocate? Is it the one that doesn't have an agreement with us to be there and be like that? Or is it the power company? Or if there is an agreement in place, do we work with the power company to try to site them, their facility somewhere else? There's one instance out there right now, and it was only, I think, 2 years ago now. An oil field battery was being constructed, 2 irrigation pivots, opposite side of the road, both of them encroach in slightly different locations, overhanging the road allowance, where Fortis was going to run down one side of the road opposite from TELUS, because that's what they do, to jump the road, to run for 80 meters, to jump back across the road, to go down the road, to jump back across the road, and go down the road to get to the battery. How many overhead crossings does council want to see out there of overhead power facilities? Because there's always somebody that doesn't lower the grain auger enough. Or we have our high load corridors where more oil and gas facilities, due to the great debate over pipelines, are now bringing in storage tanks that need those high load corridors, or Fortis to come out and kill a line, to disconnect it, to kill the power service to however many residences, to get things down the road so that they can truck that commodity in the future. I see it that the road allowance is there. The third-party utility service providers have the right to be there due to the franchise agreements and things that they have in place with the various municipalities. They have their places that they would like to go. We have the approval authority of where they go in the road allowances. If we put these agreements in place, permitting somebody to have their infrastructure there that is not going to conflict with anybody else's infrastructure, I think everybody wins. And whether, and without the 6 inch, the 1 foot, the 3 foot overhang, I'm not worried about the end gun overhanging so long as the end gun shuts off. But I've been down a road where all the sprinklers are supposed to shut off too, that hang down and they don't. Makes the grass in the ditches greener as far as I'm concerned. That's not a huge issue. Unless somebody's sprinkler head is blown off, and all it does is cut a trench all the way through the ditch and cause other problems, but I haven't seen that. I'm sure it's probably happened. But yeah, that end gun, that's up to the landowner to understand when they need to turn it off and when they can turn it back on. And believe me, municipal enforcement's heard every excuse in the books as to why it hasn't shut off properly or why it turned on early, because that's what they do all summer. But that's not what I'm worried about, because we can enforce that in the end too. If we get the agreements, we can enforce how much of it or whatever is there as well. I'm just not having anything that I can put in writing without this bylaw, policy, and subsequent agreements to give to somebody, because otherwise the answer is a no.
Okay. Wayne,
I'll move first reading.
it's been moved.
Oh, sorry.
Brian moved it. I had to make note of that, right, Brian? Gee. Come on.
I think I did, but it's so long ago that I don't have that good a
I
memory.
wrote it down. I know you did. Lionel, did you have something else?
It's not very important, but just the whole awareness thing is good, not only for the landowner, but also for the county. Because we well know there are a number of road allowances that are not where they should be. So there's some problems in that area too.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to go to the motion, which is option 1, I believe, that County Council approve the policy as presented for the purposes of addressing unauthorized use of property. That's listed at item 7.2. That's what you're wanting us to consider today, Mark?
Yes, that is my recommendation.
Is there anything else before we have a vote on this? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried for first reading. Thank you, Mark. And now, okay, we'll go back over to 11 now, right? Or 11.2? For you?
Looking for my report, if I have it correct.
Yes.
Okay, July's report. Officers issued 14 warnings, 7 tickets, following 52 investigations over the past month. Nothing new with partner hourly commitments. As everyone should know, CPOs do participate in the Canada Day Parade in Rosemary. So that was tended to again, and just some information there as to what other new requirements are coming through the Administrative Penalty Information System, where the province is going to require agencies with enforcement for e-ticketing purposes. They're also looking at barcode scanning of driver's licenses and proceeding with that. And additionally, the province is rolling out new highly reflective license plates in the fall of 2021, which through camera technology and stuff in patrol units, RCMP are going to be able to read that. I think it was also announced earlier in the year, if you all heard, you no longer get your annual sticker to stick on your license plate. This is all part of that same initiative. So instead of an officer having to punch in the license plate and run it through the system, those systems will start reading those things for officers automatically. I don't know if that'll be while they're driving down the road or not, to tell them whether somebody's registration is current or not current or whatever, but they've got lots of changes coming with that, and I'd love to say that we're going to be an early adopter, but we've been an early adopter of things, and now the province is, let's say, moving the goalposts on us a little bit. So there's some fight with the municipalities that did adopt early with e-ticketing to try to get some of the stuff in place that we've already invested in. Because really what it's going to do is drive us to be one of the last adopters and say that until it's proven, we're not going to get in the game because it's a waste of money. But it is getting pulled back our way that we're going to be able to keep what we've invested in, and that is positive news. And the other thing with that is our new patrol unit is ready for pickup in Calgary tomorrow, so we will be picking that unit up and it will be put into service here soon. Fleet services, can't avoid this one in a way, but our bulldozer, the D6R tracked dozer, received approximately $106,000 in improvements. With that, we had a lot of conflicting information until CAT was actually done with it. But contamination of soils through an external filter housing that failed, that went undetected. They didn't really realize it until they got to just about the bitter end of things too, as to what the culprit was on the dozer for that reason. We thought maybe we had some tampering with our equipment, or it was something on our preventative maintenance side that wasn't going the way it should have been, but it was a failure that went undetected anyway, and it wouldn't have been looked at otherwise. So really looking at that it's extended the useful life of the dozer by another 10 years. So $106,000, $100,000 investment, $10,000 for every year of useful life thereafter. I think that's pretty reasonable to keep it in the fleet. It's been a good unit since it was bought, I believe, in 2008. So it's getting up there in age, but for the use and purposes in fleet, it's primarily used in pushing up the gravel piles, working on our gravel pits with stripping, and it does occasionally get called to action when we get significant snowfall events and stuff like that to clear some of our roads where a greater fleet and stuff can't, which has also assisted with the snow blower on some of our other equipment. Gravel plow truck is now in service. When we received that new truck, manufacturer had built it and we couldn't hook it up to any of our trailers. So that wasn't going to serve us very well. So we sent it back, and it took them a couple of months, but it did get modified to finally connect to one of our trailers. And I don't want to say it's a challenging thing because we've had multiple of these vehicles built in the past, but again, this is some of that stuff over tendering practice. You put it out there for tender, somebody else is doing the work, you don't end up with consistency between everything, even when you write out every little detail of your specification and say it must be capable of pulling any and all trailer configurations possible. You get it back, you go to hook it up to a trailer and it won't hook up. So that has been rectified, and we're very thankful for the company to step up to the table and actually rectify that problem, which was never ours to begin with. But it's always a fun, challenging thing. Operations-wise, you guys can read the grader operator stuff. Gravel program, we're about 55% complete out of the 320 kilometers planned. Recovery of eroded soils, I don't have an update for council dollar-wise yet. We're still getting some of the final invoicing on that. Manager of operations is still looking at a few other locations to determine whether we want to go there and clean it up or not. So thinking next report, I will actually have a dollar figure to report back to council as to what that cleanup effort cost. Construction projects are underway throughout the region, and talking about residential subdivisions and whatnot through the land use bylaw. Johnson Estates 1 and 2, people have tree plantings and stuff immediately adjacent to the road. We've had concerns from school bus drivers in the past that they have to stick the bus way out there into oncoming traffic on the Smith Trucking Road. It's not safe. We're trying to buy the corner cutoffs for that to improve the sight lines for that intersection. It comes right down to us operating a motor grader too, because there's a lot of equipment that sticks out in front of where that driver sits, that they're already out in oncoming traffic before they can even get to the stop sign and see. So we got some of that land acquisition on the go, and furthermore, where we don't have roads located on road allowances, we do have another one on 16-4 south of Highway 539 in the Bow City Rainier territory. It's a windy road. It's a very low traffic volume road. The road allowance is actually sitting immediately adjacent to an irrigation drainage ditch right now. We are about 500 meters west of that with where the road is. It's been like that for ages upon ages. And I think over the past 12 years, we've talked about it probably one time every year, but we are tending to these things as we come across them to rectify them. Scary number to say, but at one point in time, we exceeded 100 of these things of varying nature. Some of it's just a little bit of a road, some of it is the entire road. So there's a long road ahead of us to get that complete, but we're working on it. Yeah, One Tree Road overlay project. Smith Trucking continues working on that. Brooks Asphalt, I should say, expected to be completed early August here, so mid-August. Line painting contractors, this has been a challenging one for us, and I know Jeff is chasing that one. But what we're hearing is that the province, the feds and stuff have a bunch of this paint locked up for their priority stuff. I don't know whether this is truth or not, but our line painting is not yet done. So hopefully before the snow flies, which is really poor because that doesn't give us any benefit through the summer season when you really wanted to see those fresh lines painted. I hope this isn't a performance thing. Construction on North Headgate's property continues. Wow, what a transformation that is. If you haven't been out there, if you're going down to Kinbrook, please take a drive that direction and see what all's happening. It's coming along really, really well, and I don't expect that we'll be doing a whole lot here. Fortis is doing the service connection cutovers. They were supposed to be done by August 1st. I'm not exactly sure where that sits. But seeding of disturbed areas and stuff, and so we just need what some people still want to see, but some people have some crop on the ground. So do we want to see rain or don't we want to see rain? We'd like to see some rain to get some grass started, and I'm sure everybody else wants to see it, but it's never good timing for a farmer when rain shows up and you've got hay cut and whatever else. But county pathway extension going southward from this building down to Township Road 18-2. that estimate's being prepared by myself, and we will be looking at getting that going based on that economic stimulus funding. EID partnership on drainage, we're definitely behind plan. We don't even have an excavator in the ground yet digging anything. It's really because of land acquisition and where we've been held up. For the EID to move in there, to do the 4.2 kilometers that we do have secured, I think they're just really waiting for the other 4.8 to come on so they can mobilize once, get in, do the work, and get on to other business. But I thought it important that for council to know that when the EID approached landowners in the Rosemary area for phase 1, any major drain improvements that were proposed were rejected by the landowners. So we're working on the roadside stuff. I've ran into 2 objections being an absolute no to land sale. 2 properties or 3 properties are currently sitting waiting for the discussion that we just had and subsequent agreements to come out. I don't know how that's going to go over, where it's not a 100% guarantee that pivots can always remain as they are. So that feedback will be solicited at that time. But I do believe that things are going to be more challenging immediately in that Rosemary area, because we're in the northwest kind of outlying area where we have some grazing. And as we get into more irrigated lands and stuff, I think we're going to find a number of constraints that just aren't going to be able to be worked through. I might be surprised. So not trying to sound like the pessimist, I want to be the optimist, but I always tell everybody I try to be the realist. And that's my perspective on that. And I'm not going to limit it strictly to Rosemary, because I think anywhere else that we also have planned improvements in irrigated, highly dense areas, we're going to find it more and more challenging. Because again, everybody's maximizing the property. Pivots are going to be a challenge. And I don't know where most landowners sit these days, whether they can afford to go down that road with us or not. So aside from that, asset management plans continue to be worked on. I'm actually struggling myself to keep up with our projects assistant and how fast she's moving through these. Budget preparations are on the go in order to meet that September 30th deadline. Road tour planning, August 26th. Want to have a small discussion with council after this about some of our options after the council meeting. And then we also have the Kinbrook Island Pathway project that'll be discussed at joint services next week that I've also been involved in and working on. So some updated numbers for council for July. We had 203 permits provided, bringing the grand total for the year 1,260. Averaging that out, we're at 2160 or 33% growth over last year. So we're issuing more than double the permits than what we did last year through the summer season, so that's great. But we are still well low of what our average was in our peaks. So, any questions of council? I will attempt to answer.
Questions? I have a question, Mark. Grader operators and the rotations, do the operators go back to certain roads more than others, like busy roads?
Yeah, most definitely. They do have to pick up some of them more frequently, generally based on condition, complaint, traffic volumes. We do try to do one full rotation, but where we have to hop to pick some of those up, we do hop back to them to pick them up.
I was sure that you did. And if is it possible if somebody thinks the road is really busy to get a road count on it?
We haven't been doing much for road counts at all. There's no reason why we can't go out and road count. Currently, our technology, again, is way out of date. In fact, we're missing one of the devices for the non-intrusive counters to actually be able to work. So that'll be something that we need to talk about in the future. So it would be a manual count of parking somebody out there to have them watch high traffic volume times, which is generally like 6 till 8, 11 till 1 or 2, and then 4 o'clock through 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and then you compile your numbers after 3 days of counting.
Somebody asked me that, and I said, just talk to Mark Harbour.
Yeah, and you know what? Some roads would surprise you as to who actually has the traffic and who actually doesn't have the traffic.
Yeah.
It is kind of interesting. Jeff was going to be working on road study update. And last time we did that, we did do a number of traffic counts on a number of roads, but that's a decade old now too, right? So.
Okay. Other questions? If not, we need a motion for acceptance of the municipal reports. Kelly has her hand up for that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And so the policy review then comes in as well, or not yet?
Well, we've definitely adopted policy in the past because not all policies have bylaws, but legal recommended that a bylaw be put in place for these same things for reasons of enforcement and whatnot, right?
Right.
We're missing the one individual that I would have really loved to call upon as to whether I should have this in front of you today or not, because should we get through the 3 readings of bylaw before we look at policy, I don't know that there's any set standard practices in the MGA or anything behind that. It strictly talks about bylaws. And only where they apply to section, can't remember off the top of my head as to where all of that sits with process. We did throw the policy in here, so I don't know if our CAO is comfortable proceeding with this or whether I should refrain from policy at this time and push it. Or council for that matter.
So the item 11.3 is policy review of encroachment onto roads and road allowances. So it's just an update, sort of?
This is brand new policy, and attached to the policy would be the various agreements that Mark would be able to execute with the landowners who are in a situation where they would be encroaching over or on. I mean, the bylaw and the related policy here are more comprehensive than I think the particular circumstances that Mark is trying to address up in Rosemary country. The policy, from what I've read, does not refer to the bylaw, which you gave first reading to this morning. So I think council would be fine to move forward with the policy and related agreements today.
Okay, so there is a 6-page policy there. So this is brand new. This isn't a review, this is a brand new policy. Okay. And so the two of them really are related, but not specifically. I mean, yeah, not referenced. Kelly?
So I struggle with passing policy before we send this out to public for scrutinizing. I think they overlap a lot when I read it. And so how do we pass a bylaw to say one thing? I mean, we're in favor of the bylaw, but how do we then put policy out there before we get feedback on it? That's my struggle here.
Well, and I can take that back, and if legal says that we can proceed with policy before adoption of the bylaw, I can bring that back for your next meeting, which will be the first one in September. I'll just let landowners know that this is all that we're waiting on before we can finish things up with some of them in Rosemary.
So this addresses a road license agreement. Is that different than?
Similar to what we're doing with road closures and leases. This would be a license to occupy, more or less, to say that your private property can be there under these terms, these conditions for X term of years, months, days, hours, whatever we needed.
So if the policy, no, this is the policy. If the bylaw, okay, I'm mumbling.
Bylaw gives us the authority, policy helps administration in their processes, right?
Right. Can we have this without the bylaw?
Well, we could, legal just strongly supported we had a bylaw in place for
As
it to
well.
help enforce it.
Matt?
Yeah, and in my mind, as I look at the bylaw lays out, the expectation, and it makes clear about unauthorized use of county property, and it goes even further than just a road allowance, right? So it's all encompassing in the bylaw. It specifies violation tags, violation tickets, a schedule of, if you're found in violation, John's going to show up first, second, and third time with an escalating fine there. The policy gets Mark moving on executing the agreements with some of these landowners that we're trying to secure that 5 meters on where their pivot is going to be encroaching, and legitimizes the encroachment.
So it's good for them.
Yeah, so it's good for them. Eventually we're going to get this bylaw in place that says if you didn't have that agreement, John can come and write you the ticket. So the bylaws, I think, more all-encompassing than the policy is for Mark's purposes in moving forward with land acquisition. Neither of them reference each other, so the bylaws standalone and the policies also standalone.
Okay, makes sense. Policy would enable you to move forward in some of these things, which I think is good, personally. It's that doldrums time of day. Brian?
No, that actually makes a lot of sense. I guess maybe that's where I wasn't aligning the two, the bylaw and the policy. The bylaw gives you one set of rules, and this allows you to break the rules. No, that's a poor use of it allows you to negotiate agreement that still respects the bylaw, but allows a landowner to basically work with you to do, whether it's third party or drainage or whatever, get stuff done. So I would make that motion for this policy, because I think it does give you another tool.
Ellen?
Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable if a legal advice was to not go ahead and just wait first for the bylaw. I would be in favor of that, so I'm not in favor of this motion.
Is that what they said? No.
I didn't have a legal opinion of when either could proceed, but as we've said, the policy is not reference to the bylaw, and the bylaw does not reference the policy. They are two standalone. Bylaw is the enforcement side of things. Policy is administrative guidance and principles in working with landowners.
Did I misunderstand you then, that you said?
No, I just said that if council would prefer that the bylaw gets put in place first, or if council wanted a legal opinion whether one could go before the other was passed in a bylaw, I could do that if that's more of a comfortable feeling.
Ellen?
I must have misunderstood. I thought you said that our council or legal counsel has advised that they should go together. I thought you just said that, but maybe I misunderstood.
They recommended both of having a policy and a bylaw. Not that they're intertwined or tied specifically referencing each other, just the bylaw is there to enforce it, where, as our CAO said, somebody is encroaching without the license or encroachment agreement, but the rest is policy guiding staff and providing us the means to work with that.
the bylaw gives you some teeth to deal with it. Well, no, you can begin working. Yeah, yeah. Kelly?
Yeah, sorry, I probably set that off in the wrong direction, but I get that now. So
Okay.
thank you for that clarification.
Any other concerns, comments? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Now I think you're done, Mark. Correct?
You're done first page as far as I know.
On second page, part of second page too. And we accepted the municipal reports, did we not? Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. One page, part of second page, back to 10.1, I think is where we're at. Council boards and committees discussion, item 10.1. Find it. I don't know if Ariana or somebody else is leading this, but I'm looking for it here. Okay, here we go. I got her.
All right. I was asked to bring this back with some actual motions to maybe get rid of some of the committees. So they are laid out in the RFD. There's some question about, in my mind, about whether you want to leave these boards and committees entirely, thus removing funding, or just not appoint a specific representative and continue funding them, and then determining whether you want to go to their events or not, kind of what we decided for the Red Deer River Watershed Alliance type thing. I did send us a couple emails to those boards because their bylaws did state we need to appoint representatives. Only, I think it was the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, no, Watershed Alliance. They said that was fine. We just have to determine voting membership at the time if an AGM was needed or not. So I guess it's up to you.
You've got it laid out pretty clearly here, Ariana, which I say thank you for. There's also the other spreadsheet involved, which if you need it. So the first one is a CAO. I mean, some of these are pretty simple, straightforward. CAO, Performance Evaluation Committee, we had discussed that. And we said that we could select councillors when a CAO performance evaluation is required. My question for this would be, when would this come into effect? Should we wait until this year is over? We have to do a CAO evaluation. And so it just struck me that, do you want to choose 3 people to do it? Or do you want to leave it as it is? Yeah, for this period of time, I thought we should probably stick with our committee that we have right now. And if, once we complete our duties, then if somebody, if it wants to be taken, changed, even if you want to do it in September, October, get this evaluation completed, that might make more sense. Thinking? Yeah, I'm seeing heads nod, so could we delay this one? So we can get an evaluation of Mr. Fensky done with Kelly, Molly, and who's the one? Clarence. He's so willing to see this. Yes. So we can bring that back later date. Okay, then the next one is the grievance committee. I think that one's safe to remove. Right, so we would need a motion to do that? Is that what we're thinking, motion?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, gosh, I forgot about you.
The voice of the storm.
Who was? Okay. Anne Marie has made a motion that we remove the grievance committee from our lists. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So Bow River Basin Council. Brian.
Well, I would make the motion to remain a member, but remove this as a council position, council appointed position.
Okay, so that is the motion to remain a member and remove the council appointed representative, because the information can flow to us. Brian?
Well, and in addition, they, as I mentioned before, they have quarterly forums, and that quarterly forum might be really resonate with one member of council, which they could go attend.
Right.
And it could be a function of council, and then there, because there has been ones, like there's land use and planning forums. I have no interest in that. I go, but it's like, well, I'd rather watch paint dry. Yeah. Anyways, but some people are into that. Yeah. So they should go, because they would get way more out of it than I would. So, and there's a science forum and so on and so forth. So there's I think it should be a shared position. And
that's an excellent thought for a committee like that. And like you said, Brian, it's rather unique because there's all sorts of different people on that. Yeah. Educational too. Okay, so Ariana, did you got that one? Yeah. Okay. Kelly, or who moved it? Oh, Brian did. Thank you, Brian. Sorry. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay. And for the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, I forget, what does it say?
Let's do first with Bow River.
What did she say? Same? Do the same?
Similar as, yeah, same as with the Bow River, and I'll make that motion. Yes.
So
there's a bit of a delay between when I talk and when you hear it. So the same as with the Bow River, and I'll make that motion.
Yes, there is a delay. Thank you, Anne Marie. So remain a member. But no council representation.
Is this the one where we need to decide about the per capita? Do we need that included? Or is that the next group?
I think that's part of remaining a member. Part of that is you have to pay to play.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So that takes us to the Red Deer River Watershed Alliance. And again, the concept of not to appoint a representative to this one either. And that we would remain a member, 50 cents per capita. Red Deer River Watershed Alliance. Ellen?
I'm just wondering, the 50 cents per capita, what does that total? I don't have my calculator.
About 3,500.
Half of 7.
Oh, the eye in the sky. So who made that motion? Kelly did again, sorry. Oh, you just, okay. There's too many motions. Kelly moved, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, and the Badlands? Canadian Badlands? Now, I mentioned earlier, I'd sort of like to wait for our joint services meeting on a couple of these to see if there's more information so that we're acting with all the information that we have. And I'm assuming that Barry will have some more information on Tuesday. I don't know. That's my feeling on a couple of these. Brian?
Well, but I mean, it's written out here that they've completed their mandate. So I think that gives us direction when a mandate's been completed on a committee. Is it relevant to continue?
And I would totally agree if that is in fact true. Like I'm not sure who said they completed their mandate or what is going on with them, or.
Well, I believe Councillor Phillipson was representative on that, and that was her words.
Okay. She's nodding her head.
Yes.
Okay. Fair enough, if that's what you want to do.
I'll make that motion.
Brian is making the motion. Any other discussion on that one? All in favor? Oops, sorry, Ellen?
So that also means that we're gonna remove the per capita expenditure, correct?
That would be, yeah. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And the next one is Newell Regional Tourism, or now it's referred to as Brooks Regional Tourism, apparently. BRTA? Yeah.
On that one, is that be under like joint services, the economic development, is that part of their program?
Well, that was part of the discussion that I mentioned last time at joint services. Was I wanted people to talk about a couple of these, and I'm hoping that they come back with some more information.
I was just wondering if it is, why do we need a council representative on that?
Well, it isn't under joint services at the present time. The discussion was to look at that possibly. Well, that was my thought on it after we get more information, but. You guys, Lionel and Tracy, Matt was there. There was going to.
I thought we'd wait with that also, yes.
Okay. Like there were a couple of them in my mind that we were going to wait on, and Brian pointed out that.
Anne-Marie would like to.
That the CBL had completed their mandate, so. I'm convinced on that one, but I'm not so convinced on a couple more of these other ones. But anyhow, Tracy? Yeah. Or Anne-Marie? I'm confused. Anne-Marie?
Yeah, if I may, with the NRTA, it's maybe a little different than with Canadian Badlands as far as mandate. But with Brooks Region Tourism, it's more that we don't need a representative on that committee. It is covered by joint services, and they might have to maybe readjust how they deal with it. But as a council, we can make the decision no longer sending a councillor to that group.
I don't disagree with that, but I'd still like to have, for me, the discussion at the joint services level. That's all I'm saying. Tracy?
Yeah, I agree with Anne-Marie too, but I am okay waiting till next meeting on this one just to see if, but I don't want to leave it forever until we make up our mind. I don't necessarily think we need representation, but I think that it's already under joint services, so to speak. They just haven't made it officially because they all work together
Yeah,
and coordinate. So it's kind of being overseen already, but
sort of, yeah,
so, you know,
but not really. Sort of.
sort of, but not really, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
let's see where, if it stays sort of or not really.
yeah.
Ellen?
Yeah, and again, that subcommittee, as we noticed this morning, then one of the councillors perhaps that is on joint services should be on that separate committee, because right now, the subcommittee that gives out the grants several times a year, when they come up, they, one from the city, one from the county, and one member at large, they decide where the money goes, because that should be really reported on then to joint services, that the ones that are on there are aware what's been given out and who did what. Because here it's a little deceiving that it says county does not provide funding directly, but we noticed this morning, yes, we do. It's not, it goes through joint services, but it's our money. You know what I mean? And they were not aware, the delegation prior was not aware that we are indeed half providing the money. So I'm just thinking I would like to see a representative on that particular subcommittee that makes those decisions. They're short. You just go through the applications, and then everybody has a say as to how much do we spend on this, and so on and so forth. So we have some say.
Yeah, it strikes me it's sort of similar to the Power Up Brooks, because Lionel, for example, you have sat on that committee when they choose who gets the money for, it's not called Power Up Brooks, it's about the Power Up period, yeah, okay. It's, there's money set aside that you can apply for as a business to, it's not even a loan, it's a gift, right?
It's a grant.
It's a grant, yes.
And the board or the committee decides, splits the money up according to how they feel is appropriate.
Right. So that would be similar to that, and I know Lionel sat on that last year, or the last time we did it, so. Let's see what we can come up with at joint services and to pull some of this together. And I mean, the city is involved as well, so I think it's fair to have that discussion. Crime Stoppers Board, I had forgotten we put lots of money into this one too, don't we? No, I'm sorry, that's not right. It's not Crime Stoppers, it's the other one.
No money at all.
No. Crime Stoppers and Rural Crime Watch.
But we are starting to pay for police. Those two sort of work together. Might be the only feedback. Or only, well, we get, they come, RCMP comes here, of course, 4 times, but.
That's the one I was thinking about.
How related are those two?
Yeah.
Molly?
Yes.
Isn't Crime Stoppers and Rural Crime Watch, that's a volunteer organization, isn't it?
A what
A
kind?
volunteer?
Yes, as far as I know.
Yeah, and if some council member wants to volunteer to sit on their boards, I think that's fine. But I don't think we have to mandate it as a council.
You would agree with that, Hubie? These are things I think that historically people know they can come to the council maybe and nab somebody to make a board stronger or to get a board going, but Rural Crime Watch, I mean, if people, and as, you know, it's a good point, as Clarence pointed out, we're paying more for the police now, and so that hopefully is something that they can get working on in a bigger way. So we just started to attend some of these meetings over the years. No, this one needs also a motion then. Crime Stoppers Board and Rural Crime Watch go together. So somebody want to make a motion? Hubie?
I'll make that motion because rural crime only meets every other month, so, and pretty well the reports that come out of there, we get them here anyway. Yep. So I'll make that motion.
Okay, to not appoint people to that. All in favor? Opposed? Next one is the Safe Communities Committee, and this is a position that began, in my mind, when Ryan Andrews was on our council, and they were working on safe communities, and together the city and the county put in money to support the position. And yes, and we still do. So that's Kendra who comes and yeah.
Do councilors, like from the city, and make decisions that, and policy at safe communities?
It's a big, long bylaw from the city of Brooks that is there.
It's a huge committee, lots of people on there, students too. Yeah.
Like there's quite a list of, I mean, we could continue to provide money and not be represented there, is what, I mean, would be one option. Or, because the Safe Communities is reporting to us here every 3 months, right? Tracy, did you have your hand up?
Yep. I was just going to mention that, but also I think we would probably have to double check the city bylaw on this one. Again, I feel that we don't need this committee, that we get quarterly reports. The funding that goes into that position gets decided at budget time by council as a whole. So it's not something that we have to monitor. And again, she's overseen by the RCP. You know, she works under them as well. So again, but be my only one question I thought of was what their bylaw, that bylaw says for its Safe Communities Committee.
Yeah, and we are part of, one rep from the Council of the City of Brooks and one from the Council of the County of Mills. We could discuss this at Joint Services too, I think. I mean, I know it's our, oh, am I in the wrong thing? Ariana.
I didn't write it in the RFD, but I was definitely thinking about it. The bylaw states not more than one individual appointed from the county council. 0 is not more than one.
Not more than one. Why do they say not more than? That's wordy, eh? 0. Huey.
The only report we don't get here, when they show up, the report is the CPO from the city of Brooks. He reports at the Safe Communities meeting, but not here. So that would be the only other report missing.
How many people show up for that? You said there's lots. Is this the one there's lots?
Yeah, there's probably 10 of us around the table.
Are there rural people, or mainly city?
There's rural, and then CPO from the city, and there's the students. There's SPEC as a representative, so they've got other groups of the city that are present there too.
What do you figure? Keep the money flowing and Matt?
On the money side of things, this is covered in our ICF at 20% safe communities.
Thank you.
So you can remove your representation, but we'll have to open the ICF if you want to remove the money.
Yeah. No, we don't. I do think it's important that the county has some people around that table, and they don't have to be counselors perhaps, but if we're supporting safe communities, it's not just one community, it's a greater community. So, Wayne?
Well, if you think the Root County we should have some people around the board, then why not a counselor?
It's up to you guys to decide, not me.
I'd agree with that. And especially since we're putting dollars in, and it just gives you a broader perspective than just a report back. And you have something to say in it.
Yeah. And it represents the whole county that way, not just a specific community. So, you okay to leave that one as is then? Don't see anybody otherwise. I see some thumbs up. Veterans Memorial Highway. I think we talked about that one. Outliving its usefulness, perhaps. Wayne?
Well, I'll make the motion that we drop this counselor and they've completely lost interest. The other municipalities, hardly anybody shows up at the meetings, and a couple of them we couldn't get quorum. And I read what the mandate when it first came out, and they've slipped away from that completely. So I just say that we're wasting our time to be on there.
Okay. So Wayne's made a motion then to not participate in the Veterans Memorial Development Safety Association. That was a 10-cent per capita amount. So that would be removing that as well. Yeah. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Newell 911. Wayne, Brian?
The province has taken over 911 and it's in Red Deer or something. What does Newell 911 do? Brian, you've been on there, so you explain that.
Thanks for the direction, Wayne. Sorry, what did you say the first one was?
Don't we have 911 has been taken over by the province?
No, we just contract the dispatch for 911 to Red Deer, so they're the actual dispatch center. So primarily our role in the last few years has been dealing with the AFRAX radio. That's probably the first one. We've dealt with another issue when it came to somebody that was there was a mix-up with the ambulance service and somebody perished. So those were the two biggies, but they're handled by staff more than us. And we develop a budget, and the budget there's a check off for per capita from all the members. So Rosemary, Pisano, Dutchess County, and the city all pay the same check off into that. And per capita, and those monies are used to replace radios basically and support infrastructure, so the communication ability is there for our primarily our fire people. So but I mean, so the reason I had my hand up is this is one that was directed to joint services, and I really want to hear what the others have to say, because there's I think it can be changed. Really, I've been the chair for about 6-7 years now. And I mean, other than co-signing checks or just going online and doing checks approval, we meet probably 4 times a year. And that's really just to do budgetary type stuff. So do we get an update from Stuart and from Kevin and Barry? Absolutely. But I think the role could be well served on the joint services end. And, you know, budget-wise, they could work with, I mean, we just bring the budget here for approval anyway, so whether they submit the budget to Matt or Matt's colleagues in the other munis, you know, that's a click of a button. So I think there's a opportunity for change, but I do want to respect the fact that this was brought to joint services at the last meeting. They've been asked for input, and I would like to hear that before we move on this. Wait till September. This is another one. If we could, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, Kelly?
So I heard you say communications, Brian. Do you have any money? Can you buy some iPads?
The communications that we funded we funded $1,000 for all the AFRAX radios per radio, and we funded, and I think it was $500 for the units that go in the trucks for the fire trucks and that the communication. And then there was some mobile or some stationary type stuff. I think there was another ones that like Bassano needs one, and I think Dutchess needs one, and the city needs one, and maybe one in Rolling Hills. Anyways, they're sort of a stationary unit that sits at the fire halls. We funded a portion of that. It's all tied into the AFRAX, but it was necessary to have this equipment to improve the status. So
that's
and we do
your
have,
long answer.
yeah.
What's your short answer? Do you have any money?
We do have money.
Oh,
yeah.
So maybe
we have
some
reserves. I don't think you buy a lot of iPads with like $40,000. So
40.
Yeah, that was in our budget request.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe we have a referral there.
I think that could be determined, but it is primarily a audio communication type thing, and it was mostly to help out the munis because they had to still fund their portion. County funded the huge majority of it for the mini munis, other than the city. So yeah, you'd be helping out the county mostly. So if you did that, but that hasn't been a consideration. It's primarily been on the communication end of it, the radio end of it. But you know that mandate may change. We actually changed we reduced our per capita last year by about, let's say, a third. So the checkoff was less. We're more economical, and but we do build a reserve for when we have to replace them radios again. And they, as we know, they expect 10 years is probably the life of them, and they need to be replaced. So.
And it's a fairly hefty per capita, as per capitas go. So there's history on that.
It was 480. It's not 480 anymore, I don't think. I think we're down around 350 or something like that.
So we'll wait for joint services discussion.
And just, I think, Stuart should probably be part of this too, if that's where the radios are going. No? No, not okay.
The history is that there was also the ambulance association at one time was part of it, and it was a shared per capita thing. And then the ambulances were taken right out of it.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason that we review the tenders when the term is up for the actual dispatcher. And I mean, you've educated me lots on that too. When it used to be, is it Friends? Frems. Yeah. That was I think our original, and then it moved to Red Deer from there, and that's where it's been. And we retendered last year. And that was one of the reasons we could reduce our per capita so much. The tender came in, blew us out of the water. They were happy to extend the previous, but we tendered it and we got a way better deal. And it was Red Deer that won the tender again. So, yeah. So that's one of the roles that we played too, is just to review the tenders. But again, that's That's not something that I don't think you need a committee for. If you look at what you're actually responsible for, a budget, determining tenders, I'm not sure that we haven't outgrown, or it hasn't outgrown what our role was.
Okay, we'll wait on that one. And the Palliser Economic Partnership. I've never had any problem supporting PEP, and the reason is because I think it helps our region rather than just the county. And the region is the county, but also the mini munis, even if they don't think that. But I think they appreciate our involvement. Anyhow, that's my comments. Wayne.
I agree, Molly, and actually it also supports southeastern Alberta. There's quite a few members there, and they're under new management now, and I think there's a lot of people are getting excited about PEP again, because there was some problems before. But this guy is the new guy. Barry's willing to listen. So I see some excitement there, so I think this is something we could keep.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to be the bugbear. What have they done for our area? They've done it or taken credit for it?
Wayne, you need to
Your
use
mic. Your mic.
And they've done, well, you go down to, where is that? I can't remember the town, but they've got that railroad. They have
Foremost.
That's right. And a few of it, they're working on bringing in some pulps, trying to put a pulse grain, a protein plant in. And they're working on stuff like that. And now that I guess they're looking at Medicine Hat is putting some for hydrogen or some dang thing together. But I haven't been to a meeting for a couple of months, so.
They've provided money at times for some of the smaller communities to do some research on different things. Trying to think of what they've done. Was that in Pisano? Yeah. And in the Southeast, they certainly are part of the promotion of the Southeast. The drone place, where's that? Foremost? Yeah, has received lots of support from that. Oyen has really done well through PEP, I think. Brian.
Well, I'm going to play the other side of that. I think a lot of these groups have done that. I think the role that PEP has done, and I've sat on it for a few years, was to do the study and provide the conduit from the province for money to be received for those studies. They got pools of money that they had to distribute, and so they've done these studies. But by and large, the things that have taken credit for would have happened anyways. The drone thing in Foremost would have happened. The Oyen rail line, that was done primarily by the people from Oyen. I know they came to us saying, how can we spend some money? And we looked at a energy from waste thing, and then that got changed to a rail line change and then the tiny homes in Pisano, that project. I mean, those were all things that they were other people's ideas. They weren't PEP's ideas. The big one that they worked on was out at on that project that they were looking at adding some rail capacity. I want to say at that turnoff down towards the Hayes. What's that road there? 524. And I always thought it was interesting. They did the work, and then it had to be proprietary because they were afraid somebody was going to find out about it, and somebody with greedy hands was going to get in there and buy up all the land. And so they had this, and then we were sworn to secrecy because, it couldn't be trickled out, and somebody used this information. And I thought, well, that's exactly what you exist for, is to gather the information and then get it out there so private money could maybe run with it. But anyways, I think it's a good conduit to get people together to talk, Wayne, people from other municipalities. Beyond that, I'm not so sure. Because that was the role that I played. I met some wonderful people on that committee from different municipalities, and it gave you the chance to talk about it. Whether the actual PEP did stuff other than research and development, I'm really not sure that any of that came to fruition. That wouldn't have come to fruition on its own accord.
I'm not really sold on them either, but I think there's potential there. That's about all I can say.
So we should give them a year. Well, I don't know about it, but Anne-Marie.
Actually, I'm okay with giving them a year or two. And I was never really too crazy about PEP, but it had to do with personalities too, like Wayne said. And now with a younger group, there's energy, and yeah, I'm willing to give them a little bit more time.
I think part of the reason that I would like to see us stay involved too is because we're one of the bigger municipalities. Medicine Hat, Brooks, and us. And Medicine Hat comes and goes. And Brooks is out. I don't know, but as I said, it's not just always been about what we get out of it, but what some of our other municipalities might. So, Lionel? Whoops.
I would like to see it continue also. Just the principle of what they're trying to accomplish. And what they accomplished, I'm not certain whether that's as valuable as I think it is. But I think the fact that we're getting together, a number of different people in the region, I think that does have some value. So I think I would stay with it.
Well, somebody want to make a motion or leave it alone?
What's the bill?
$1.15 per capita. 75,000. Thank you, Kelly. And we have tried over the years very diligently to find people from the communities, business people from the communities. And sometimes we find somebody, sometimes we don't. Mainly don't. So if someone doesn't want to make a motion to dissolve it, I'll say, well, we're not going to do anything, we'll leave it alone. Wayne?
I move that we stay in PEP for 2 years and review it at that time. Can we do that?
You can do whatever you want, Wayne.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? I think it passed. I think it passed, right? Is that what you saw? Yes. Okay. And that is it on the committees. Oh no. Yes. All right. Good. All right. Assessment model changes. Nothing. Checks for payment. Payment register for council. We need a motion to accept the payment register. Lionel moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. I think that's it. I think. Take a look, guys. Have we missed anything? Oh, Kelly?
Just under events, want to remind everybody, Bazzano Parade and Rodeo is August 14th at 11 a.m. is the parade. 2 p.m. is the Bulls, the Broncs, and the Barrels.
And we'll be looking.
Well, and
for
the
people.
beer in Bazzano.
And we'll be looking for people to participate in the parade. Not sure yet, truck or ponies. The way it's going, it can be truck. The heat isn't going away. Isn't that something, eh? June, July, August, 3 months. Ooh. Anything else? Lionel?
Just a question for Matt. The financial information, how did you feel about the results of that at this point?
Where we're sitting currently this year?
Yes.
So far, I think so good. We've done really well, I think, on our tax collection. We've provided some additional flexibility for some of our oil and gas companies to cash flow throughout the year. I know they've appreciated that. Investments are a little bit lower than what you would have seen advertised from CIBC the last couple of years, but I think they also advertised not to continue to expect those kind of returns on a fixed income portfolio. You know, some of the things that you don't see here, like we don't accrue for our school tax, so I think we still owe $5.5 million on school tax. So when I look at the statement of financial position, I see we're sitting on lots of cash, lots of investments. We still have $5.5 million to go out for the school tax. I think about $12 million to spend yet on the capital program. So there's still a lot that we have left to do this year. We're not over budget on many line items. The line items that we have been over budget on, you know, I did approve for our corporate safety department. They've been working on moving away from their e-compliance software to our in-house Laserfish solution, which we've been working on. We didn't quite get the Laserfish built soon enough for the e-compliance contract to come off, so I extended that. You'll see that in the over budget expenditure explanations. I think we're having a decent year even with where the soil erosion is going to shake out. You know, I pulled that up when Mark spoke to it. I don't know if I still have it up here, but to date, we're at what, 147,000 on that. Still waiting for some invoices to come through, but I know that's lower than what we had approved for additional spending coming from the stabilization account there. If we can get the province to approve those 2 amended applications, we'll get their money spent. You know, I hope to have in front of council before, you know, maybe that first meeting in September, impacts of COVID-19. Yeah, we spent a little bit more, but we got just over that 700,000 for operating stimulus. We've got this 900,000 just about for municipal stimulus spending capital. We're probably going to be to the good when it comes to the impacts of COVID, and then the impact it's had on people's demand for camping. You know, we're at about $72,000 in campground fee revenue, and we budgeted for 69, so it's going to be a gangbuster year for Emerson Bridge Park. Yeah, I'm not sure if I spoke enough to it, but I think we're just so blessed in this region. Like, we've really been lucky with the oil and gas companies that we do have. We continually get emails from our peers wanting to know what our experience has been. Hey, do you want to go in on a lawsuit against this company to collect? And so we search our tax roll to see if, no, we don't have them in our jurisdiction. So, you know, I think we're doing pretty good, all things considered, right? I mean, we have a whole path of capital replacements ahead of us with bridges and overlays that are coming at us, but I think over the last decade, we've really positioned ourselves well to see what's coming at us. We've got the information in the databases. We're working on tightening up our asset management plans, so we're a little smarter on how we approach these things and what we sock away, and the assumptions that we build into our models. So I'm really happy that oil's above $70 and has persisted for a while. I mean, it's just, we have had financial whiplash just mentally. I think the last year where we've been in terms of the sky is falling to, oh, we've got the ground back underneath our feet and maybe we'll be all right. It tells me you really have to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. But I think we're in a pretty great spot in terms of our flexibility. We've got lots of room to play around if we needed to on the debt side of things. We've got lots of room to be flexible with the reserve position that we're in. County of Newell's a pretty great spot to be living and working and running a business.
So, pension plan for retiring councillors?
Is that a motion?
No, seriously, timetable for the school requisitions, what is that?
Yeah, so we pay that quarterly, March, June, September, December. So you'll see the next bit come out in September.
Well, I think everybody around this table appreciates the great place we live. For sure, and the great organization that people like Ariana and Matt, us two at the table, keep moving us along, for sure. So thank you for your hard work and for a long day here at the table. Goodness, I thought we were going to be done at noon. What happened? It's my fault. I'll take all the blame. And it's not over yet, guys. Remember, we're meeting with Mark? No, Mark? Yeah, road tour. Or maybe Jolene, or who is it? Okay, did you summon them in? And that's August 26th. I haven't been paying attention. I'm sort of on take a holiday already. And I missed that memo and I thought, ooh. So I went back and found it's the 26th.
I think Mark was fine with you return.
Of course. All right. I will adjourn the council meeting then at 3:55. Thank you, everyone.